Hello, my name is Daniel Hartley, 33 years old, a software engineer living in a small town in Oregon where lush green hills embrace narrow roads and everyone knows each other, from who just bought a new car to who forgot to lock their back door. I'm not the type to enjoy telling my life story, but if you're reading this, you're probably curious about why I'm sitting here writing these lines late at night, with the sound of the wind blowing through the window, reminding me of days gone by, days when my family, or more precisely my younger sister Lena and I, thought we had it all. This town, Hood River, is so small you could walk from one end to the other in less than an hour, yet it has a strange charm, as if time is stuck somewhere between rows of apple trees and rivers glittering under the sunlight. I live in a small second-floor apartment with a balcony overlooking the Columbia River. The apartment isn't big, but it's enough to hold what I need. A cluttered desk full of papers and my laptop, an old armchair I picked up at a flea market, and a bookshelf crammed with technical manuals and a few novels I've never finished reading. My life, if I had to describe it, is probably a series of repetitive days. Wake up in the morning, make coffee, write code, attend online meetings with the team in Portland, then come home in the evening to watch a movie or scroll through social media. Simple, but I liked it, or at least I thought I did until everything changed. I grew up in a family that, from the outside, everyone would consider perfect. My parents, Richard and Eleanor Hartley, were the kind of people the whole town respected. My father was an accountant, always dressed in crisp suits with a deep, steady voice like stone. My mother was a high school literature teacher, delivering inspiring lectures about Shakespeare or Hemingway. But at home, she was a strict woman who always put the family's honor above everything else. They weren't the type of parents who hugged their kids or said, "I love you." To them, that was something extravagant, unnecessary. In our house, love was shown through punctual family dinners, reminders to do homework, and unbreakable rules. No talking back, no doing anything that would make the neighbors gossip, and above all, no bringing shame to the Hartley family. As the eldest, I suppose that made me the one to bear the weight of invisible expectations. From a young age, I learned to do things the right way. Get straight A's, play football in high school, graduate college with a software engineering degree, and find a stable job. I wasn't a genius, but I was hardworking, and I knew how to make my parents proud. But the one who truly captured my heart in that house wasn't my parents. It was Lena, my little sister. Lena is 5 years younger than me. I still remember the day my mother brought her home from the hospital, so tiny with big round eyes and golden blonde hair. I stood in the corner of the living room watching my parents smile at each other, a rare smile I hardly saw later on. Lena grew up like a gentle breeze, soft and kind, but with a resilience I only noticed as she got older. She was always the listener, always knew how to make me laugh, even when I'd just been scolded by Dad for breaking a window or getting a C in chemistry. I taught Lena how to ride a bike, how to make kites from old newspapers, and how to hide in the backyard when Mom was angry. We were a team, no matter what happened. But our family wasn't as perfect as it seemed. When I was 15, I started noticing the cracks. On nights when my parents thought I was asleep, I'd hear them arguing. Not loud shouting matches, but cold, sharp whispers like knives cutting through the air. I heard my mother talk about wanting to leave, wanting freedom. I heard my father reply, his voice heavy, saying she couldn't do that, for the sake of honor, for us, for Lena and me. I didn't fully understand, but I knew something was wrong. One night I saw my mother sitting alone in the kitchen holding a glass of wine, her eyes red. I didn't dare ask. I just quietly went back to my room. Later, I overheard her telling a friend on the phone that she had wanted a divorce but stayed for the sake of the children. I didn't know if that made me grateful or guilty. Maybe both. Lena thankfully was too young to notice these things, but she was sensitive enough to feel the tension in the house. Once when she was just 7, I found her curled up in her room clutching her favorite doll, asking me, "Daniel, why doesn't Mom smile anymore?" I didn't know how to answer, so I just patted her head and said, "Mom's just tired. If you're good, she'll smile again. I wasn't sure if I believed my own words. Despite the shadows in our home, Lena and I found ways to make each other happy. We had our little secrets, like sneaking cookies in the kitchen at midnight or pretending to be sick to skip school and watch cartoons all day. I remember when Lena was 10, she lost the silver bracelet Mom had given her for her birthday. She cried her eyes out, terrified of Mom's scolding. I spent the whole day searching the house and finally found it under the sofa. When I handed it back to her, her eyes lit up like I'd just saved the world. "You're my superhero," she said, and I laughed, but inside I thought, if I were a superhero, I'd take our whole family somewhere where everyone smiled more. When I went to college, Lena was 13, starting to become a young woman. She was still gentle, but beginning to have her own thoughts, her own dreams. She said she wanted to be a nurse to help others because people need someone to care for them when they're at their weakest. I was proud of Lena, but I was also worried. I knew our parents wouldn't easily accept anything outside their plans. They wanted her to study law or business, fields with a future. After graduating college, I chose to return to Hood River, close to family. My job after school was decent, with a salary enough to live comfortably and save a bit. I liked being near Lena, hearing her talk about school, her new friends, and her dream of becoming a nurse. Every weekend, I'd go home for dinner with my parents and Lena. Those dinners were always a bit awkward. Dad talked about work, Mom asked about future plans, and I tried to lighten the mood with funny stories about co-workers. Lena was usually quiet, just smiling and nodding, but her eyes would always find mine as if to say, "You get me, right?" Everything seemed fine until one day when Lena was 22, in her final year of nursing school. I received a message from her, short but enough to make my heart race. "Daniel, I need to see you. Don't tell Mom and Dad." I knew immediately something was wrong. Lena wasn't the type to overreact, and the tone of her message sent a chill down my spine. I called her right away, but she didn't pick up, only texting back, "Tonight, the coffee shop on Maple Street, okay?" That evening, I went to the coffee shop on Maple Street, waiting for Lena with a latte that had gone cold. The dim streetlights cast a hazy glow on the wet sidewalk after the afternoon rain, reflecting faint streaks of yellow light. My heart was pounding, not from the coffee, but from Lena's message. "Don't tell Mom and Dad." Those words kept replaying in my head like a stuck record. The door of the coffee shop jingled and Lena walked in. She was wearing an oversized wool coat, her blonde hair tied up high, but her eyes were red as if she'd been crying all day. She sat down across from me, her hands clasped tightly together, avoiding my gaze. I wanted to ask right away, to shout and demand what was going on, but I knew Lena. She needed time to open up. The air between us was heavy, filled only with the soft acoustic music from the shop's speakers and the murmurs of a few customers in the far corner. "Lena," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Are you okay? What's going on?" She bit her lip, her eyes blinking rapidly as if trying to hold back tears. Then she looked up, her voice trembling, almost a whisper. "Daniel, I'm pregnant." The world around me seemed to stop. I stared at Lena, searching for any sign that this was a joke, that she'd burst out laughing and say, "Just kidding." But no. Her eyes were brimming with tears, her lips pressed tightly together, and I knew it was true. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat felt tight. I just sat there, still gripping the cup as if it was the only thing keeping me from spiraling into panic. "How far along?" I finally managed to say, my voice hoarse like I'd just run a mile. I tried to stay calm, but my mind was a storm. Lena was pregnant. My little sister, the girl who used to sneak cookies with me at midnight, was sitting here telling me she was going to be a mother. Lena looked down, her hands twisting together. 5 months, she said, her voice so soft I had to lean in to hear. I don't know what to do, Daniel. I'm scared." 5 months? I repeated, my voice louder than intended. I wasn't an expert on pregnancy, but I knew enough to understand that 5 months wasn't a recent discovery. Lena, why did you keep it a secret for so long? Why didn't you tell me sooner? She looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was too scared. I thought I could handle it on my own, but then it all became too much. Jared, Her voice broke and she covered her face, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Jared? I frowned, trying to place the name. Jared Thompson. I'd met him once when I dropped Lena off at her college dorm, a tall guy with blonde hair and a confident smile like the world was his. A finance major, always talking about big plans, but there was something in his eyes I didn't like. What about Jared? Does he know? Lena nodded slowly, each nod seeming painful. I told him 2 months ago. At first he said he'd stay, that we'd figure it out, but then he disappeared. No texts, no calls. I heard from a roommate that he moved to Seattle for some startup job. He left me. She paused, taking a deep breath. He doesn't want the baby. A surge of heat rushed through me like my blood was boiling. Jared, that arrogant jerk, had abandoned Lena, my sister, the kindest, gentlest person I knew. I wanted to stand up, drive straight to Seattle, find him, and punch him in the face. But looking at Lena, so small and fragile, I knew my anger wouldn't solve anything. Okay, balancing, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. We'll figure this out. You're not alone. I'm here. I reached across, taking her hand. Her hand was ice cold, but she squeezed back like I was her lifeline in the middle of the ocean. Daniel, I don't want to have an abortion, Lena said, her voice firmer, though still trembling. I know what people will think, what Mom and Dad will think, but I can't. This is my baby. I nodded, though my mind was a tangled mess. I didn't know what to do, how to help Lena through this, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let her face it alone. Then we'll keep the baby, I said, as if it was the most obvious thing. But Lena, you have to tell Mom and Dad. They need to know. Her eyes widened, filled with panic. No, you don't understand. They'll kill me. They'll never forgive me. You know how they are. I knew. God, I knew all too well. Our parents, with their ironclad rules, always held the family's honor above everything. A daughter pregnant out of wedlock at 22 in a small town like Hood River, where people gossiped more than they drank morning coffee. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a stain they'd see as indelible. But I also knew we couldn't hide it forever. Lena had kept it secret for 5 months, and her belly would soon betray the truth. I squeezed her hand, trying to give her strength I wasn't sure I had. Lena, listen to me, I said, my voice low, trying to calm her. We can't hide this forever. They'll find out sooner or later. It's better they hear it from you than from some nosy neighbor. I'll be there with you, okay? I won't let you face them alone. She looked at me, her eyes glistening with tears, searching for a glimmer of hope. You promise? She whispered. I promise, I replied, though my own fear was no smaller than hers. I could picture Dad's face, the way he'd purse his lips, his eyes sharp as knives. I could hear Mom's voice, not yelling, but whispering words that cut deeper than any shout. But I wouldn't let Lena face it alone. Never. 2 days later, I took Lena to see a doctor. I didn't want her going alone after what she'd been through with Jared. We went to a small clinic on the outskirts of Portland where no one knew us. Lena sat in the passenger seat, silent the whole way, her hands cradling her belly as if protecting the baby from the world. I glanced at her, forcing a smile. It'll be okay, I said, but my voice lacked the confidence I wanted it to have. That afternoon, I drove Lena to our parents' house, the white 2-story with a wooden fence I used to call home. The house looked the same as ever, with its neatly trimmed garden and the Hartley family sign by the door. But today it didn't feel familiar. It felt like a fortress, and we were intruders. Our parents were in the living room when we walked in. Dad was in his armchair reading the newspaper while Mom was wiping down the dining table, her movements slow and deliberate as always. They looked up, slightly surprised to see both of us. Daniel, Lena, what's this about? Both of you showing up like this? Mom asked, her voice soft but tinged with suspicion. Lena stood close to me, clutching my arm tightly. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk." I started, my voice shakier than I wanted. "It's about Lena." Dad folded the newspaper slowly, his eyes narrowing. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice low like stone. Lena took a breath, then said, her voice trembling but clear, "I'm pregnant. 5 months along." Silence, a heavy, sharp silence, as if the air in the room had been sucked out. Mom stopped wiping the table, her hand gripping the cloth, her knuckles white. Dad sat up straight, his eyes shifting from surprise to anger. "What?" he roared, his voice echoing in the small room. "I'm sorry," Lena said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for this to happen, but I want to keep the baby." Mom stepped forward, her face hardened, her eyes sharp as knives. "Lena, do you realize what you've done?" she said, her voice low but cold. "You've destroyed this family's honor. What do you think the neighbors will say? How do you think we'll hold our heads up?" Dad cut in, his voice no gentler. "Lena, you need to fix this. Get an abortion. Now." Lena shook her head, tears falling like rain. "No, I won't. I can't." "Can't?" Dad stood abruptly, his voice like thunder. "You don't get to choose. You've disgraced this family and now you dare talk back to me?" I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stepped in front of Lena, as if I could shield her from their cutting words. "Lena hasn't done anything wrong. She's trying to do the right thing. Can't you see that?" Mom looked at me, her eyes full of disappointment. "Daniel, you're defending her? Do you know what this will do to us? She needs to fix this or we won't be the Hartley family anymore." "The Hartley family?" I scoffed, though my heart ached. "Family means standing by each other, not keeping up appearances. Lena needs us and you're turning your backs on her." Dad pointed at me, his face red with rage. "Don't lecture me about family, Daniel. If she wants to keep that thing, she's no longer my daughter. Get out of this house. Now." Lena sobbed, clinging to me. I felt like my heart was being crushed, but I couldn't let her break. "Fine," I said, putting my hand on Lena's shoulder and guiding her to the door. "If you're kicking Lena out, you're kicking me out too. We'll manage on our own." The door slammed behind us, the sound ringing like a final judgment. Lena sobbed in the car and I drove away, fighting back my own tears. I didn't know what we'd do next, but I knew one thing. Lena and her baby were my family, and I'd do anything to protect them. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. I brought Lena to my apartment, a cramped space meant for just one person. I gave her the bedroom and slept on the sofa. I switched to working online, taking on a few freelance projects to cover expenses. Lena barely left the room, sitting there, cradling her belly, her eyes vacant. I tried to make her laugh, recounting old stories about the nights we sneaked cookies, but she only managed a faint smile, as if smiling itself was a burden. The neighbors started to notice. Mrs. Miller from downstairs, who always brought cookies to new neighbors, began looking at me with probing eyes. "Daniel, is your sister okay?" she asked once, her voice brimming with curiosity. I just smiled, saying Lena was resting, but I knew the rumors had begun. In Hood River, secrets didn't stay secret for long. I started learning about newborn care, reading books I never thought I'd touch. I learned how to mix formula, change diapers, and hold a baby properly. Every evening I sat with Lena, telling her about what I'd read, trying to convince her we could do this. But sometimes, after she fell asleep, I sat alone on the balcony looking out at the Columbia River, feeling like I was drowning. I wasn't just a brother anymore. I was a protector, a caregiver, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough. The months that followed were an endless string of long days. I worked from morning till late at night, coding on my laptop while Lena slept or sat quietly in the armchair, reading nursing books. I took on more freelance projects, small gigs that were enough to cover rent, medical bills, and the things Lena needed. I didn't complain, but there were nights when my eyes stung from staring at the screen too long, and I felt like I was running a marathon with no finish line. Lena noticed. One time she came out of the room holding a cup of hot tea and placed it in front of me. "Daniel, you don't have to do everything," she said, her voice soft but laced with worry. "I can find a part-time job." "No," I cut her off, maybe a bit harsher than I meant. "You need to rest. Let me handle it." She looked at me, her eyes glistening, then nodded, but I knew she felt guilty. I hated that she thought she was a burden. But I didn't know how to make her understand that, to me, she and the baby were the reason I kept going. The community around us didn't make things easier. Hood River is a small town and news spreads like wildfire. I started noticing prying looks when I went to the grocery store, whispers behind my back when I bought coffee. "That's the brother of the girl who's pregnant out of wedlock," I overheard someone say at the store, their voice a mix of curiosity and judgment. I pretended not to hear, but each word was like a small knife cutting into my pride. I didn't care what they thought of me, but when they looked at Lena, when she pushed a cart in the supermarket, her pregnant belly visible under her sweater, I saw the way they turned away, as if she were something shameful. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them they knew nothing about her, about us. But I just clenched my fists, stayed silent, and held Lena's hand tighter. Lena felt it too. She went out less, often staying in the apartment with the windows shut. "I don't want them to look at me like that," she said once when I asked why she didn't come for a walk with me. "I don't want them to think I'm a mistake." I hugged her, trying to tell her she wasn't a mistake, that she was the strongest person I knew. But my words didn't seem enough to erase the pain in her eyes. Not everyone turned their backs, though. Mrs. Miller, the neighbor downstairs, started showing up with containers of homemade food, pumpkin soup, toasted bread, sometimes a plate of cookies. "The girl needs to eat properly," she said, winking at Lena. For the first time, Lena smiled a real smile, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the whole world wasn't against us. When Lena reached her 8th month, everything became more real than ever. I took her to regular checkups, and the doctor said the baby was developing well. But Lena needed more rest because she was showing signs of fatigue. I tried to make things easier for her, cooking simple meals, buying extra pillows for her to sleep comfortably, even learning how to massage her feet when she complained of pain. But Lena grew more anxious. "Daniel, what if I can't do it? What if I'm not a good mother?" she asked one night as we sat on the sofa, watching an old movie neither of us was really focused on. "You'll be a wonderful mother," I said, taking her hand. "You already love this baby even before it's born. That's what matters most." She smiled, but I knew she was still scared. I was scared too, but I didn't dare say it. I was afraid I wouldn't be strong enough, that I'd fail Lena the baby and myself. The day Lena went into labor came unexpectedly on a rainy October morning. I was coding when I heard her call from the bedroom, her voice panicked. "Daniel, I think it's time." I nearly dropped my laptop, my heart pounding as I rushed in. Lena was sitting on the bed, her face pale, clutching her belly. "It hurts," she whispered. I don't clearly remember what I did in the next few minutes. It was all a blur. I helped Lena to the car, drove like a maniac to the hospital, trying to stay calm while she breathed heavily and gripped my hand. "I'm here," I kept repeating like a mantra, though I was trembling myself. When we reached the hospital, the nurses quickly took Lena to the delivery room. I wanted to go with her, but they told me to wait in the hallway. I sat there on a hard plastic chair, staring at the wall clock ticking, each second stretching like an hour. I thought about our parents. They still hadn't reached out. Not a single call, not a single text. I had called Mom a few days after they kicked Lena out, hoping they'd change their minds, but she only said curtly, "When Lena fixes her mistake, come back." I hung up without another word. But now, with Lena in the delivery room, I wanted to call them, to shout into the phone that they were missing the most miraculous moment of their lives. But I didn't. I just sat there praying, though I wasn't sure who I was praying to. After 3 long, agonizing hours, a nurse came out smiling. "She's given birth, a healthy baby boy." I stood up, my legs shaking so much I nearly fell. "Can I go in?" I asked, my voice breaking. The nurse led me to the room. Lena was lying on the bed, drenched in sweat but radiant. Next to her was a tiny bundle wrapped in a white blanket, eyes closed tight. "Micah," Lena whispered, looking at me. I named him Micah? I stepped closer, unsure what to do. The nurse handed Micah to me and I held him gently, afraid I might break something so precious. He was so small, so warm. And as I looked down at him, I felt a strange sensation, like the whole world had narrowed to just me, Lena, and Micah. I cut the umbilical cord, my hands trembling, and when the nurse showed me how to hold him properly, I felt like I'd become part of something bigger than myself. The weeks that followed were a new challenge. Lena was weak after the birth, and I became the primary caregiver for both her and Micah. I learned how to change diapers, mix formula, and soothe Micah when he cried in the middle of the night. Some nights I only got 2 hours of sleep, juggling work and watching Micah so Lena could rest. I was exhausted, but every time I saw Micah sleeping, his tiny hands clenched into fists, I felt it was all worth it. Lena slowly recovered, and she started studying nursing again through online classes. I saw her sitting at the laptop, taking careful notes, though her eyes were still tired. "I want to do this for Micah," she said once when I asked why she didn't take a longer break. "I want him to be proud of his mom." Seeing Lena like that, with her quiet resilience, I felt both proud and heartbroken. She was trying so hard despite everything, the judgmental stares from the town, the cold silence from our parents, and the scars Jared left behind. I wanted to tell her she was already an incredible mother, but I just smiled, patted her shoulder, and went back to my work, trying to keep everything from falling apart. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Micah was now 3 years old, a tiny boy with golden blonde hair like Lena's and big, curious brown eyes that took in the world. He was the center of our lives. Every morning I woke up early to prepare his bottle, playing with him while Lena studied. Those moments when Micah giggled or clutched my finger were the only medicine that helped me forget the sleepless nights and the piling bills. But one thing tugged at my heart. Micah called me Daddy. The first time he said it, I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Lena laughed, but her eyes held a trace of sadness. "He loves you," she said, "but you're not." She didn't finish, but I understood. I wasn't Micah's father, even though I'd done everything a father would. Our life, though difficult, had slowly stabilized. Lena studied diligently, I continued working online, and the neighbors, especially Mrs. Miller, became unexpected allies. She often brought over old toys or a plate of cookies, always with a comment, "For the little one, Daniel. You're doing great." Those small words kept me going, but deep down I still felt a void. Our parents hadn't reached out. I tried visiting them once when Micah was 1, hoping they'd soften at the sight of their grandson. But Dad just stood at the gate, coldly saying, "Get out of my sight. He's not a Hartley." I drove back, gripping the steering wheel, fighting back tears. Then one evening, everything changed. I was on the sofa checking work emails while Lena fed Micah in the kitchen. My phone buzzed with a new email. I glanced at it, expecting another project, but the sender's name froze me. From Jared Thompson. Jared. The name hit me like a punch to the chest. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. 3 years. 3 years since he abandoned Lena, leaving her alone with a 5-month pregnancy. I wanted to delete the email, to pretend it didn't exist. But a part of me, curiosity or maybe anger, made me click. "Daniel," the email began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. But I need to talk to Lena. I want to see her and my son. I was wrong and I want to make it right. Please give me a chance." Blood rushed to my head. A chance? He thought he had the right to ask for a chance after what he did? I stood up, pacing the living room, trying to suppress my rage. Lena came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes worried. "Daniel, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I hesitated, unsure how to tell her. But Lena wasn't a child anymore. She deserved the truth. "Jared sent an email," I said, my voice dry. "He wants to see you. And Micah." Lena froze, her face paling. She sat down, her hands trembling. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I handed her the phone, letting her read it herself. Lena scanned the email, her lips pressed tight, her eyes glistening. "He has no right," she said, but her voice wavered. "After everything, he has no right to come back." "Exactly," I replied, my tone harder than I intended. "He abandoned you, Lena. He doesn't deserve to be Micah's father. You don't have to see him." Then I caught a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. She looked out the window, where streetlights cast a glow on the wet sidewalk. "But maybe Micah needs to know who his father is," she said after a moment of thought. Her words felt like a slap. Micah needed to know his father? I'd been here for 3 years, changing diapers, staying up nights, doing everything to keep this family together. But I wasn't Micah's father, and though I hated to admit it, Lena's words stung. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He hurt you, Lena. Who's to say he won't do it again?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't know, but I have to think about Micah. If Jared is truly sorry, maybe he deserves a chance to know his father." A few days later, I agreed to let Lena respond to Jared's email. I didn't want to, but I couldn't force her. Lena wrote a short, polite, but cold message, agreeing to meet Jared at a coffee shop in Portland, a neutral place, not Hood River, where people would stare and whisper. I insisted on going with her, not because I wanted to see Jared, but because I didn't trust him. Lena agreed, but I saw the uncertainty in her eyes, as if she were caught between two worlds. On the day of the meeting, I drove Lena to Portland, leaving Micah with Mrs. Miller. Lena was nearly silent the whole way, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I wanted to say something to comfort her, but I didn't know what. When we arrived at the coffee shop, Jared was already there, sitting in a far corner wearing an expensive gray suit, a far cry from the arrogant college kid I'd once met. He stood when he saw us, a nervous smile on his lips. "Lena," Jared said, his voice soft but tense, "thank you for coming, and Daniel." He nodded at me, but I didn't respond. I just sat down, arms crossed, staring at him. Jared started talking, his voice shaky. He explained that after leaving Lena, he moved to Seattle and worked for a tech startup. The company succeeded, and now he was a millionaire, owning a penthouse and a team of employees. But he said none of it made him happy. "I was wrong, Lena," he said, bowing his head. "I was scared back then. I wasn't man enough to be a father. But I've changed. I want to meet my son. I want to make things right." Lena sat silently, clutching her coffee cup. I wanted to interrupt, to yell in Jared's face that he didn't deserve this, that he had no idea what we'd been through. But I stayed quiet, letting Lena decide. Finally, she looked up, her voice cold but firm. "Jared, you left me when I needed you most. You think an apology is enough?" Jared knelt down, right in the middle of the coffee shop, drawing looks from a few people. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he said, "but I want to prove myself. I want to meet Micah, to be part of his life, and I want to make up for what I did, to both of you." He looked at me as if seeking my approval. I felt my blood boil. "Make up for it?" I snapped. "You think money can buy back the 3 years Lena had to endure? The 3 years I watched her cry because of you?" "Daniel," Lena said, placing a hand on my arm, her voice soft but firm. "Let me handle this." I clenched my jaw and looked away. Jared kept talking, promising to provide for Micah, to secure his future. He even said he'd hired a lawyer to set up a trust fund for Micah. Lena listened, but I could see she was torn. She wasn't the naive girl who once loved Jared, but she was a mother, and I knew she was thinking about what was best for Micah. In the weeks that followed, Lena met Jared a few more times, always in Portland, and I always went along. Jared was patient, bringing gifts for Micah, a teddy bear, a toy car, But I noticed how Micah clung to me, calling me daddy, and it broke my heart. Jared tried to connect with Micah, but the boy was too young to understand. Once, when Jared tried to hold him, Micah cried and ran to me. I saw Jared's eyes darken, but he said nothing. Lena was wavering. "Daniel, I don't know what to do," she said one night after Micah was asleep. "Jared says he wants to be a father. He has money. He can give Micah a better life. But I don't know if I can trust him, and I don't want to lose you." "You won't lose me," I said, taking her hand. "But you have to decide what's best for Micah. Not for Jared, not for me, but for your son." She nodded, but I saw the conflict in her eyes. I was conflicted too. I'd spent 3 years being Micah's father, but now Jared was back, with money and promises. I was afraid of losing Micah, of losing Lena, but I couldn't be selfish. I had to think of them. The days that followed, I tried to live normally, but every time I saw Micah running around the apartment, grabbing my hand and calling me daddy, my heart tightened. I knew Lena was considering Jared's offer, and though I hated to admit it, I understood why she wavered. Jared didn't just return with an apology, he brought a future. He talked about a trust fund for Micah, about providing for Lena, and above all, about wanting to be a father. I could hate Jared for what he did, but I couldn't deny that he could give Micah things I never could. A stable, comfortable life, free from worrying about bills or sleepless nights from overwork. One afternoon, as I came home from work, Lena called me into the living room. She was sitting on the sofa, Micah dozing on her lap, while Jared stood in the corner, hands in his pockets, looking tense but determined. "Daniel," Lena began, her voice soft but firm. "Jared has something to say to both of us." I sat down, arms crossed, trying to stay calm. Jared cleared his throat, stepped forward, and placed a stack of documents on the table. "Daniel, Lena," he said, his voice steady but clear. "I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I want to start. I've bought a house in Hood River, right by the Columbia River. It's worth $1 million. I want to give it to the 3 of you, Lena, Micah, and you, Daniel. It's a place where Micah can grow up, where Lena can study and work, and where you, Daniel, won't have to worry about rent anymore." I was stunned, speechless. A house? $1 million? I looked at Lena, seeing she was just as shocked. "Jared, are you serious?" she asked, her voice trembling. He nodded, pulling a set of keys from his pocket. "I've signed the papers. The house is yours. I just want to do the right thing." I wanted to refuse, to say we didn't need his money, that we'd managed fine without him for 3 years. But I looked at Lena, at Micah sleeping peacefully on her lap, and I knew I couldn't let pride stand in the way of their future. "Thank you," I said, my voice dry. "But this doesn't change what you did." Jared nodded, as if expecting my reaction. "I know, but there's one more thing." He turned to Lena, his eyes softening. "Lena, I want us to start over. If you'll have me, I want to marry you. A proper wedding, to give you respectability, to give Micah a complete family. I promise to spend my life making it up to you." Lena sat silently, her hand gently stroking Micah's hair. I could see her struggling, torn between the pain of the past and hope for the future. I wanted to shout, to tell her Jared couldn't be trusted, that he might abandon her again. But I said nothing. This was Lena's life, Micah's life, and I couldn't decide for her. After many nights of reflection, Lena called me out to the balcony where we often sat watching the Columbia River. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft but resolute, "I've made my decision. I'm going to forgive Jared, not because I still love him, but because of Micah. He deserves a family, a future. Jared can give Micah things you and I can't." I nodded, though my heart felt like it was being crushed. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He hurt you once. How do you know he won't do it again?" "I don't," Lena admitted, her eyes glistening. "But I have to try for Micah, and you'll always be the most important person to me and my son. No one can replace you." I hugged Lena, hiding my tears. I knew she was right. Micah needed a family, a father, even if that father wasn't me. But knowing that didn't ease the pain. I'd spent 3 years being Micah's daddy, and now I had to learn to let go. Lena and Jared's wedding was held at a luxurious hotel in Portland, adorned with white flowers and twinkling lights. Lena wore a white wedding dress, her golden hair intricately braided, looking like a princess. Micah, in a tiny suit, ran around the reception hall, giggling when I scooped him up. I was the best man, standing beside Lena, smiling while my heart broke. Jared, in a tuxedo, looked like a man transformed, but I still couldn't fully trust him. I scanned the reception hall, hoping to see my parents, even in the back row. But they didn't come. I'd sent an invitation with a short letter saying Lena was starting anew, that they could meet their grandson. No response. I guess they still felt guilt, or perhaps they clung to their pride. Whatever the reason, their absence hurt more than I expected. After the wedding, Lena, Jared, and Micah moved to Seattle, where Jared had a penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. I helped them pack, trying not to let Micah see my sadness. When he hugged me and said, "Daddy, I'll see you soon, right?" I just nodded, afraid to speak in case my voice broke. I moved into the new house Jared gave us, a spacious 2-story home by the Columbia River, with a garden and large windows facing the green hills. It was more beautiful than anywhere I'd ever lived, but it felt empty. No more of Micah's laughter, no more nights talking with Lena on the sofa. I kept working, kept coding, but every evening, sitting alone in the large living room, I felt like a part of me was missing. A month after the wedding, on a rainy evening, the doorbell rang. I was surprised. Few people visited at that hour. When I opened the door, I froze. My parents stood there under the dim glow of the porch light. Mom, her silver hair plastered wet to her forehead, looked at me with red, weary eyes filled with an emotion I'd never seen in her: regret. Dad stood beside her, shoulders slumped, his stern face now aged a decade. "Daniel," Mom said, her voice trembling, nearly drowned out by the rain. Can we come in?" I nodded, speechless, my throat tight. I led them into the living room, where the warm yellow light illuminated the bare walls, highlighting the stillness of the house. They sat on the sofa, Mom clutching Dad's hand, their fingers intertwined as if she were drawing courage from him. I sat across from them, gripping the armrests, my heart pounding. For years I'd imagined this moment, the day my parents faced what they'd done. But now that it was happening, I didn't know how to feel. Mom took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. "We were wrong, Daniel," she began, her voice breaking. "We were too harsh, too cold. We pushed Lena away, and you too. We thought we were protecting the family's honor, but we lost our family. I'm sorry." A tear rolled down her cheek, and she bowed her head as if unable to meet my eyes. Dad, always the stoic one, looked strangely small. He nodded, his voice hoarse, each word a struggle. "We read your letter about Lena's wedding. We wanted to come to see her, to meet our grandson, but we didn't dare. We were afraid Lena wouldn't forgive us, that you wouldn't want to see us after what we did." He paused, gripping Mom's hand, and I saw his eyes redden. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. I sat silently, emotions crashing over me like a wave, anger, pain, but also a hint of relief. For years, I'd been furious at them for turning their backs on Lena, for leaving me to carry everything alone. But seeing them there, two aging, remorseful people, my anger melted, replaced by a deep sadness. "Lena forgave Jared," I said, my voice soft but firm. "And she'll forgive you. She's stronger than you think. And Micah, he needs his grandparents. He deserves to know a family's love." Mom burst into tears, rushing to me, hugging me tightly as if afraid I'd disappear. "My boy," she sobbed, "I hurt you. I never meant to." Dad stood slowly, placing a hand on my shoulder, an awkward but heavy gesture. "You're a good brother, Daniel," he said, his voice trembling, "and a father to Micah. I'm proud of you." We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, in the large but suddenly warm room. The rain still fell outside, but its pattering now sounded like a lullaby, gentle and comforting. For the first time in years, I felt my family wasn't just broken pieces. We could heal, step by step, and though the road ahead was long, I knew we'd walk it together. After my parents left, I sat back on the sofa, the now cold coffee mug still on the table. The house was quiet, filled only with the sound of rain and my heartbeat, still racing from what had just happened. I'd been angry at my parents for so long, convinced they'd never change. But seeing Mom cry, seeing Dad, the man as unyielding as stone, tremble as he apologized, I felt a part of me lighten. They weren't perfect, but they were my parents, and they were trying to make amends. I picked up my phone, my fingers hesitating over the screen. I wanted to call Lena to tell her about Mom and Dad, but I was afraid she wouldn't want to hear it, that the wounds they'd caused were too deep for her to forgive. But then I thought of Micah, of his radiant smile, and I knew I had to try. I dialed her number, and after 2 rings, Lena's voice came through, warm and familiar. "Daniel, I was just about to call you. Micah was asking about Daddy this morning." I smiled, though my heart tightened at the word Daddy. "How's the little guy?" I asked, trying to keep my tone cheerful. "And you? How's life in Seattle?" Lena laughed, a sound soft but full of life. "Micah's doing great, Daniel. He loves running around the apartment, driving Jared crazy because he keeps wanting to play superhero. And me, I'm studying again, and Jared, he's good to me, Daniel. I never thought I'd be this happy." The apartment overlooks the bay, and every morning Micah stands by the window pointing at the ships and asking a million questions. I feel like things are finally okay. Hearing Lena speak, I felt a wave of warmth, tinged with a hint of loss. She was happy, and that's what I'd always wanted. But a part of me still missed the days when it was just me, Lena, and Micah in that cramped Hood River apartment, where we were each other's entire world. "I'm glad for you," I said, and I meant it. "Lena, I have something to tell you. About Mom and Dad." Silence. I heard Lena take a breath, as if bracing herself. "What is it?" she asked, her voice quieter. "They came to my house tonight," I began, recounting everything, how they stood in the rain, how Mom cried, how Dad admitted their mistakes. I described the regret in their eyes, the apologies I never thought they'd utter. When I finished, Lena was silent for a long moment, and I worried I'd upset her. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forgive them right away, Daniel, but I feel relieved. They're our parents, and I don't want Micah to grow up without knowing his grandparents." She paused, then continued, her voice brighter. "Daniel, Thanksgiving is coming up. I want to invite you and Mom and Dad to Seattle, to our home with Jared. I want our family to be together, even if it's just for a day." I was stunned, not expecting Lena to open her heart so quickly. "Are you sure?" I asked. "They'd be thrilled, but you don't have to rush." "I'm sure," Lena replied, her voice firm. "Micah needs to know what family is, and I want you there. You're the most important person to me and my son." I smiled, tears silently rolling down my cheeks. "I'll be there, Lena, and I'll bring Mom and Dad." In the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, I reconnected with my parents. I visited their house, the first time since they'd kicked Lena out. The house was the same, with its white fence and neatly trimmed garden, but this time it felt warmer. Mom made tea, Dad sat across from me, and we talked. Not just about Lena, but about the years gone by, about things we'd never said. "You did well, Daniel," Dad said once, his eyes holding a pride I rarely saw. "You held this family together." When Thanksgiving arrived, I drove Mom and Dad to Seattle. They were quiet the whole way, Mom holding Dad's hand, Dad staring out the window as if preparing for something monumental. I was nervous too, unsure how Lena would react to seeing them again, or how Micah would respond to meeting his grandparents for the first time. Lena and Jared's apartment was on the top floor of a luxurious building, with large windows overlooking the shimmering Puget Sound. When we walked in, the smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air, mingling with Micah's laughter. He ran to me, shouting, "Daddy," before noticing my parents. Lena came out of the kitchen wearing a simple green dress but glowing, with Jared beside her, holding a bottle of wine and smiling awkwardly. "Hello, Mom, Dad," Lena said, her voice soft but slightly trembling. She stepped forward, hugging Mom first, then Dad. Mom burst into tears immediately, holding Lena tightly, whispering apologies. Dad stood still, but when Lena hugged him, I saw his shoulders tremble. "I'm sorry," Mom sobbed. "I was wrong to push you away." "It's over, Mom," Lena said, smiling through her tears. "We're here now. For Micah. For family." Micah, curious but shy, stood behind my leg, peering at his grandparents with wide eyes. Mom knelt down, opening her arms. "Hello, Micah," she said, her voice choked. "I'm your grandma." Micah hesitated, then ran to her, hugging her, and the room seemed to light up with his laughter. The Thanksgiving dinner was a picture of perfection. We sat around the table with turkey, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie beautifully arranged. Jared talked about his work, trying to ease the tension, while Lena shared stories about school and her dream of becoming a nurse. My parents listened, nodding occasionally, and I saw them smile, genuine smiles, not forced. Micah sat between Lena and me, eating and chattering about a ship he saw in the bay, making the whole table laugh. As dinner ended, we gathered around the fireplace, its crackling flames warming the room. Lena took my hand, whispering, "Thank you, Daniel. Without you, I don't know where I'd be." I squeezed her hand, saying nothing because words couldn't capture what I felt. My parents stayed an extra day playing with Micah, talking with Lena, and for the first time I saw them as real grandparents. As they prepared to leave, Mom hugged me, saying, "You gave us a second chance, Daniel. We'll never forget that." Dad just nodded, but his pat on my shoulder said everything. Back in Hood River, I sat on the balcony of the new house, watching the Columbia River glimmer under the moonlight. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours, with its cracks, tears, and smiles. Lena and Micah were happy. My parents were back, and I, though still quiet, knew I'd done the most important thing. Kept our family together.